Welcome to my channel Tic Tac Toe. Today we will learn about exception handling in Python programming. If we have doubt in any portion of our code that might get error or exception at the runtime, we need to handle that portion of code at the time of writing the program. That will handle the exception and the program will not stop at the point giving exception. To do so, we have to write that portion of code in a try block. The try block will test a block of code if it have errors. Then another block that is called exception block, which will handle the error without stopping the program execution. Then there may be another block which will execute if there is no error in that try block, that will be called else block. After all, there may be a block which will execute regardless of the errors occur or not. This will call the finally block. So now let's start. First we will do print a. Now we do not have assigned any value to a, so print a will give an exception and the program will stop here. Now let's test. So it is giving exception. Now if we do not want to stop this program or give an exception, so we have to write this code in try block. So this block is called try. After try, this portion this with this indentation, this means the try block. So in this try block we have written print a. If this is giving error, so there will be an exception that is called variable is not defined. So it is a message which will show at the runtime and the program will not stop at the runtime. So now the variable is not defined. Here there is no exception with the Python code, only the message we have written here. So this is the way to handle an exception. We can include many exception blocks with the type of the exception. For example, here this is also our try block. Now we are giving two exceptions. First exception is name error. There are many defined error in Python. So here we are giving this exception name error. If this is the error, then the message will be variable is not defined, or otherwise it is not a name error, another exception is handled, then it will handle here and it will give this is not a name error but something went wrong. So now let's try what will happen. So variable a is not defined, so this is a name error, so it is giving this error as this is a name error. We can use else keyword to define the block which will execute if there is no error in that try block. Let's see. Here in the try block we are printing a string, so it is not a variable, it is a string, so it will print, it will not giving any error. So if error exists, so it will print exception occurs, otherwise it will print no error at try block. So in this case there will be no error and it will print no error at this try block. So this else part means except else. So if there is no exception, then else part will work. So now let's see. So it is printing and giving that no error at in the try block. There is another block called finally block which will execute regardless of the error occurs or not in the try block. So here let's try here we want to print x, so it is a variable, it will not print, it will give an exception, and this finally block will finally close the try portion, that is giving the message the try block ends here. So finally will be a block here, if exception holds or not, it will print the message, or if it will do the work in the finally block. So let's see, there is an error, so there is an exception, but the try block, the finally block also works here. If here we print, so it will not be an error, but the finally block will work here also. Let's see, so it will print the variable, print the string, but it will work, the finally block also works here. So finally block will work in regardless of it is an error or not. Now nested try block. First we want to try to open a file, then in the next try block we will write on that file. Let's see, so this is a try block, here we will open a file, so by default it will be a read only file, but we are want to write here. So here file will open, but in case of writing it will give an exception that cannot write. Then finally this finally is regarding of this try, so this finally will work, try block which wants to write in a file ends. Then as the file opens we will close that file, then exception can, then except this exception portion is for this try if it cannot open the file. So let's see, so it cannot open the file as there is no file named fastfile.txt. Now we make a file, now there is a file that is fastfile.txt, but it cannot write, the try block ends, try block which wants to write in a file ends. So there is now, after creating the first file, then this file opens, this try block can work without exception, but this try block will not work as it cannot write, and this finally block will print the message and close the file, then ends. So this way we can use the nested try block. Now the program will continue without leaving the file object open. Now we can raise an error without program error, that is there is no program error, Python will not give an exception, but we want to raise an error. For example, an integer can be less than 0, but in our case we do not want an integer that is less than 0, so we raise an error here, we want to raise an error here. So now in that case we will write a equal to -1, that is negative. So here we want to raise an exception that if a is less than 0, then there will be an exception and this block will close this portion. So exception, negative numbers are not allowed in our program. So here, now let's see what happens. So there is an exception. This exception is negative numbers are not allowed. So here, if we do not raise the exception, then it will not give an exception. So let's see. So it will print, but here in our case, as we do not want the negative numbers, so it will give an error. So we have to write the raise exception portion. We can define what kind of error to raise. We want to raise an error when the variable is not assigned to an integer. So in that case, we will raise the error. So this is a string variable, but we want to raise this error if this is, we will check if this is not an integer, then there will be a type error. So this is an error mentioned in Python code. So we have to know these type of errors, and we will want to specify, we can specify the special type of error to raise. So we can, in the previous case we raise only exception, now we raise the type error type exception. So here the output will be, this is the type error, only integers are allowed with this message. So I think you all understand how to handle exceptions in Python. Today is up to this. Meet you in next video. Till then, practice more exception handling and let me know if you have any doubt. Thank you for watching this video.